we have meeting notes of our supervisors meeting of June 26th and July 2. You've all seen them, and I have a motion for their approval.
So moved.
Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, Lisa, it's your turn.
I wanted to let you all know that we are recording for the first time ever. So I'm able to start it right here. So it's recorded. And audio and visual. Also, at the end of the meeting, the supervisors will be going outside to take a tour of the new fire truck for Longwood Fire. And they set a ride, so whatever they choose. Next month, I'm going to be doing the second quarter financial presentation. We are still working on the rental ordinance that we talked about in several meetings. We're hoping to finalize a draft of that really soon. And we have revised the tree list ordinance in our ordinance for street trees when developments come in. That's all I have.
Okay. New business, we have resolution 2013-11 having to do with increased prices for our sewer. Bob, I think you have that, if you would, please.
I don't have what it's from. It's for the Ashford thing, and it's agreed upon every year. We agree to the neighbors on what the fees would be. So
the ordinance is, the resolution is that the quarterly sewer charges for Ashford, which is a community system that the township is co-owner of, and the township has to help bring the system up to compliance, which it is now. But the township bills the residents there, and they pay us for their sewer. So it will be increased to $510 per quarter, beginning the third quarter, which is next billing cycle.
so moved.
I second it. Any questions, comments? Hearing, seeing none, I move the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
As a lot of you know, we hired a full-time building inspector. And part of his job duties, he agreed to be the deputy zoning officer, since our zoning officer is part-time. So tonight the supervisors will appoint the building inspector as the deputy zoning officer.
I move we appoint Rick Hicks as the deputy zoning officer.
Second.
Any comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Ordinance 211, the dog leash ordinance.
No,
Kendall.
Kendall.
I'm sorry, Ms. Kendall. Not on purpose, Calvin.
So Kendall submitted an application to demolish an old house that was on, I believe, Meeting House Lane. Is that correct?
Back in there.
Yeah. And it's a historic house. So because it's a historic house, they had to go through a special process, and it had to go before the Planning Commission. We have a representative here from the Planning Commission, who's also on the Historic Commission. And the Planning Commission did look at this house. They had Bob Wise, who is a historic consultant, look at the house. And it was determined by the Planning Commission and the consultant that the house should be torn down, that it cannot be rehabbed. The Planning Commission made a motion at their July meeting that the supervisors approved the demolition permit with a couple conditions. One of them is that they pay for a physical survey of the house to be by Bob Wise, who is the historic consultant, prior to demolishing it, so that the township has a record of what was there. They agreed to do that, and the scope of the survey was determined between the Planning Commission subcommittee and Kendall, and that Kendall would enter into an agreement that they maintain the screening between where the house is and Kennett Friends. Kendall submitted a letter to us at the meeting that is an agreement from Kendall to Kennett meeting, agreeing to keep this screening. So that letter's a couple years old, but our attorney felt that letter's adequate because it is to maintain the screening. So tonight, the supervisor will vote on approving the demolition permit.
I move that we approve the demolition permit for the request of Kendall.
I'll modify that to include the recommendations of the planning commission.
Yes.
A second,
I accept
based
that.
on that.
Are there any questions or comments from the audience? Hearing none, I move the issue. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, now to the ordinance 211 dog leash ordinance. Lisa, I think you have something on those.
This ordinance we've discussed for several months, and it's been on the website. This ordinance was initiated because Kennett Borough created a dog leash ordinance for their park, Anson Park, and they asked that the supervisors create the same ordinance to require that dogs be on leashes in the park. We are under control of the SPCA and the Pennsylvania State Dog Ordinance laws, so you still have, the law is that you do have to keep your dog, contained on your own property or on a leash. But the supervisors agreed to put this ordinance in effect so that at all parks, public areas, and public events and athletic fields, that you have to keep your dog on a leash. If you don't, then the police can be called and it can be enforced immediately. The other part of this ordinance is that all dog owners will have to clean up after their dogs. So this ordinance is up for a motion tonight.
I'll make a motion to adopt the ordinance.
Second.
How about some comments from anyone in the audience? Bob?
Thank you. My question, more clarification.
Introduce yourself, please.
Listerman. I'm township resident, planning commission, amongst other things. My dog's licensed by the county, not the state. So,
That's who licensed dogs.
so aren't there already county laws in place regarding this?
There's Pennsylvania laws that everybody in Pennsylvania is supposed to follow, and the county has the same laws that they follow, and the county issues the license.
Okay, so this is a
So
open
yes,
area.
they're already in place, it's just that it gives us more action immediately.
Okay. That's all. That's my clarification.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
let me clarify that a little further. The state dog law says that an owner must maintain control of their dog at all times or on a leash. Well, there are some dogs that are definitely under your control, except that they get excited in park situations, public events, athletic fields. So this borough in Nixon Park both of us had a problem with this because there's a lot of activities in Nixon Park now. It's very well used. So they asked for the dog leash law in their section of the park and asked us to do the same. We took it a step further because of the athletic ball fields that the school has and the Pennock Park on South Street and how we have a trail system. So that's why the township took it a step further in to say it needs to be at that point, and I think the borough's adopting that too. So that's really what's behind it.
I point out that there is a dog lot at the park where you can unleash your dog inside, and it seems to be fairly popular. Any other comments? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're moving right along.
The next ordinance is the proposed ordinance for discharging of firearms. I don't know if all of you know about this ordinance, but some residents had some issues with a few property owners discharging their firearms. They asked that the supervisors put some sort of regulations in place. So the township solicitor has created a draft ordinance, which there's copies in the back if anybody needs an extra copy. It is on our website. I did distribute the ordinance to all the residents that asked to be on the list to receive it, and I received quite a few comments back. I consolidated those comments and gave them to the supervisors. I also gave them to our attorney so he can review them. It ends up that there's 20. So I just thought we would open it up for discussion. Because what will happen next, the supervisors will need to discuss this ordinance. Our attorney will need to get back to us as to whether the comments can be included in the ordinance. And then the other thing is the supervisors need to decide if they'll send it on to the planning commission for their input. So do you guys have
It's not
to?
required, though, is it?
No, but that's, you guys have to
Yeah,
decide if you want to
we
do
want
that.
to do that. Questions, comments?
Ted Moxon, I live on Cedarwood Lane. Can the comments that you just referred to be amended? Because I didn't get a copy of this
Sure.
before the meeting, so I'd like to amend.
Oh, absolutely.
Just,
But, you know, I'd like to amend it, add a few
Good.
questions.
Read them, comment is there.
That in general, and I'll try not to belabor this, because we went on ad infinitum at the last meeting, and I had quite a bit to say. But at this meeting, all I really want to say is that, although, you know, I read through this, I'm not wildly, objectionable to anything really in here. I just am not happy that it seems that the township is ready to pass an ordinance based on what I only know to be one basic incident of an individual having some major disputes with his neighbors, and I appreciate all the neighbors being very upset about that, but it just occurs to me that perhaps maybe they should try to exhaust some civil remedies beyond legislative remedies first, before the township jump into this with both feet with an ordinance. I know there are other municipalities in the township or in the state and the county that may have adopted some ordinances, but it seems that this is kind of breaking new ground for municipalities to be trying to create ordinances of this type. This particular ordinance, I don't see anything really objectionable in it. I just don't know that it's necessary. I'm not saying that I wouldn't eventually support such an ordinance. I just don't know that it's time to jump into it. However, I do have one question about it, and that is the 100-yard limit within 100 yards of a property line.
150, isn't it, Ed?
No, it's 150 of an occupied building, but then it also says no discharge within 100 yards of a property line. I assume that means, the property owner's property line. That seems a little arbitrary to me. Maybe there's some case law that the township attorney is thinking of when he put that in there, but I certainly hope that it's not in there specifically to impinge on this one person that is creating all this furor.
Sure it is.
No, it isn't. It was in somebody else.
I take your point quite well. This is still a working paper.
our attorney drafted this ordinance based upon.
Is your attorney here?
He's
No.
not. He drafted this ordinance based upon some other ordinances that other townships have adopted, and that's where he came up with that.
So let's just rubber stamp it.
No, we're just discussing it.
I don't understand why you just said that.
Why are we taking someone else's ordinance, basically, and you guys look like you're getting ready to pass something here?
Certainly
Why?
not, I can tell you that right now.
This is just out for discussion.
Okay, and how long do we have to actually have some other representatives come here
As long as
to
it
say
takes
their
to pass
piece?
the ordinance or not.
Say that again?
As long as it takes to pass the ordinance or not pass it.
We're not
We're
really-
asking. It won't be passed before the next township meeting.
Oh,
Because it
absolutely.
can't be.
There's not a chance of that happening. Go ahead, please.
Denise Klein, Hellendale Road. As far as these distances are concerned, I think with regards to hunting, let's just say during deer season, these are the kinds of distances that are already in place for having someone hunt your property and how far away from property lines that has to occur. So I don't think it was arbitrary necessarily.
Is this not about target shooting at a range?
No.
No?
No.
It's not about shooting at a range?
No.
Private
What?
range.
It's not about shooting at a private range?
No, he doesn't have,
Well,
he's shooting at a tree.
George?
George Swain, Fairville Road. I'd like to clarify a misconception that this gentleman brought up. This is not a single individual or a single occurrence. This is a repetitive action by multiple individuals, and the chief informs us that this is occurring throughout the township. This is not an isolated incident, but just unsafe acts which cause many of the neighbors to fear for their lives when they go outside. How many people in here tonight are for this reason? And how many people have been afraid to go outside? It is not against any one individual or occurrence. This is a broad problem that is addressed through the proposed ordinance.
Hi, Rich Lett. How is the adequate backstop proposed? Are there NRA regulated guidelines or suggestions, or?
That's one of the questions we sent on to the attorney.
Did he think about that or have comments when he proposed it?
He did not.
Okay.
Back over here.
Yeah, Mary Kay Gager, Fairville Road. I have petition signed by 153 township residents, so it's more than just a couple of people. I also spoke to people in Balmoral, and they've had in the past people shooting in the open space, not in the middle of the houses, but I guess there's some open space between Walnut Valley and their community. So it is something that is happening in other parts of the township, and I was looking at there's dozens of townships in the state that have this type of legislation. There is no civil action that residents can take absent an ordinance. There's no basis for it. There's no standing, there's no cause of action. So this is a place where really government has to help find the solution. And frankly, I don't think litigation should be our first way to resolve a problem. And finally, I looked through some comment sections of some folks that are target shooters and do stuff like this, and frankly, the legislation seems very consistent with what those groups say is safe and makes sense. So I view this as, my husband grew up as a hunter, our next door neighbor is a hunter. They're all people that say, this makes sense for something to be safe. That's all it's trying to accomplish. If there are common sense that someone who would be impacted on it wants to bring to the statute, absolutely, they should be a part of that.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, over here.
Linda Green, Fairville Road. Do we have a Kennett Township public shooting range? I'm not aware of one.
Come to my knowledge. Albert, do we have such a range? I don't
No,
think
we don't.
so.
But there are
Seems
ones
like that
within
would solve
5 miles of
Yeah,
our
there's some within 5 miles.
Okay.
There's one in Unionville,
Right there.
one on 22.
Yeah, Bob Listerman. 123-4E timeframe. Wouldn't that be better stated like dusk to dawn?
Yeah.
Yes.
We've already commented.
Yeah, okay.
We all have, right?
Any other comments? Well, we're not taking a vote at this time. This is to bring you up to date on the status of where this ordinance is. It's got effort behind it, and it will not lag for lack of due diligence. I think you all keep track of it. George?
A question. Has the representative from the state government been contacted at all?
I am not aware. No.
That was a question from last week.
Yes.
I wonder if there could be some attempt.
There's somebody.
I'm Michael Phillips. Has
Has
anyone from the NRA been contacted about
Not
this?
to my knowledge.
Can you identify yourself?
I just did, Michael Phillips.
Yeah.
Thank you, I didn't hear you. Thank you.
Now.
Okay, sorry,
Go
Ted
ahead.
Markson again. I would hope that the supervisors would make some attempt to try to include the thought of the people who are creating this situation in this discussion. Now, if they refuse to participate in the discussion,
I think the thrust of a lot of what we have said, and others here also have said, that we are paying a great deal of attention. We've synthesized a lot of comments into 20, and we're going through them, and they are from people that are both here and elsewhere. So we are clearly, this is a work in progress, and I don't want to say any more than that.
well, no, I'm speaking of the gentlemen or gentle people who are doing the firing and are causing the consternation of the people that are requesting this.
I think he was invited to attend the meeting and did not.
Okay.
This is a public meeting, he's
Yeah.
certainly entitled.
Oh, that's fine.
Well,
Should not show up,
We
that's
would
the
have,
problem.
we would be very happy to have
That's
you
right.
manage.
Yes, Richard Gott, Chester County Press. I have a question for Chief McCarthy. Yes, Chief, you had mentioned in an interview I had with you about a week or so ago that there could be a possibility of having a very informal township meeting between those who are firing the guns and who have been pointed to, and the townspeople who are raising a little bit of concern about this. I was wondering if you could let me know about what the status of that type of meeting would be right now.
Well, we proposed it, but since then, there was something threw that off track with a disagreement, or some type of incident between the shooter and another resident. So I need to let things settle until I can propose that again, although he was contacted, and we only left him a message because we couldn't get a hold of him.
Thank you.
We are, well, anybody here, though, that hasn't given comments, please do so, if you have some.
Okay, appointment of Denise Klein to the Historic Commission. Do you want to make any comment? I know Denise is a member in that work.
Yes, Denise Klein has been a volunteer, Denise is here. She's been a volunteer on the Historic Commission for a long time, and the Historic Commission has asked if she would be appointed as a permanent member.
I would move that we appoint Denise Klein as a member of the Historic Commission.
Second.
Any questions or comments?
I second.
Hearing none, any questions, all those in favor?
Denise is there for the
Congratulations. Keep up the very good work. 52 Bikeway. John, I think you have some comments, please.
I've got a report for the Board of Supervisors on the bikeway projects. And it breaks down into 3 pieces. Thank you for adding us on the agenda at the moment, but we've had some meetings and actions that made it appropriate to report at this time. First, by the way, I'm reading from the sheet, and as soon as we get that new equipment to work, we'll all see it right here. But, it's technology, so we have to wait another month maybe. In any case, the board has a copy of this. The Kennett Bikeway is a project that started in 2005, runs from Hamilton along the Kennett Pike, just south of Mendenhall, Pennsbury Township line. So after all that time, the construction phase of this thing is about to be formally started. It is a project managed by PennDOT. We don't have anything to do with it except we worked on all the specifications and everything. They're going to manage the construction work. Basically, it's a shoulder improvement project, and it was actually advertised for bid last week under the ECMS system. It's a $640,000 project. The bid due dates is August 15th. PennDOT will process that, award the bid sometime in the fall, with a notice to proceed. That's an official action they take in November, with physical completion scheduled for October 2014, a year from this fall. When I talked, hopefully they would do that in the summer, the construction. I just made a note here, another piece of this, about $85,000. Some of us worked on the bid process. They asked the township to manage the inspection services, and that was awarded to Gilmore Associates, about $85,000. For this work, there are no additional township expenditures. Everything's covered by this federal highway grant. So I think when we're done, we're going to have a pretty nice pedestrian bikeway path along the shoulder. Any questions on that? George?
John, what's the relative date of completion?
It's supposed to take 60 days, 60 construction. And they'll start either in the spring or hopefully, we're going to encourage them to do it in the summer.
School buses.
They certainly won't do it in the winter, because they got to pave.
Asphalt.
The next piece I want to talk about is the Longwood Connector. The first item I have on here is the Brandywine Valley Scenic Byway had a $200,000 grant for design and study of the piece from Longwood, Hamilton to Longwood, and the section in Pennsbury Township, that is south of Mendenhall down to Delaware line. We will likely abandon that grant. We have found out that doing work using federal guidelines and PennDOT is too costly and too much red tape. We can get the job done with much less than other means. So that was a tough conclusion. We haven't formally said that to PennDOT, but we've indicated that to PennDOT.
Has there been any reaction from them?
Not a word. One comment was they're glad to have the money back. Money places to spend it. In the meantime, Kent Township has applied to the William Penn Foundation for a grant of $350,000, that's an 80-20 grant. And that is only on this piece from Hamilton to Longwood. But we feel we can do not only the design, we can do the construction. So this is the half price. That grant, we're still waiting for their decisions, but the announcement is scheduled for September. So in a couple of months, we'll know whether we got that money or not. We recently have met with Longwood to address legal issues and around the right-of-way and liability issues. This is a big problem, because at one point Longwood said it couldn't do it because of liability. But our team came back to Longwood and said, let's try again, and we got the attorneys together. And the attorneys think they can work it out. And we're working with some of the executive staff over there along with that. Everybody wants the thing to succeed, so I think it will. One other interesting outcome of this whole looking at this path from Hamilton over, it does provide an opportunity to solve some issues around Hamilton. One is to provide a new street, alley kind of thing, which also serves as the trailhead when you're going from there toward Longwood. There's some problems that we surfaced having to do with sewer alignment and so forth. You know, that private sewer system up there, the pipes are not in the right place, so Longwood feels we can fix that situation while we're doing this new little alley and so forth. And it provides some real safety improvements for two of the houses that now use Route 1 as their driveway. They'll be able to use this alley in the back of the house, which would be part of this trail. So we think that's some added benefit that could come if we build on that. The next step is to continue discussions with Longwood, and we are going to encourage the attorneys to write a memorandum of understanding, not the final thing, but that we feel will help us in our competitiveness with this grant application. If we can show that Longwood and the township have found a way to solve this liability and right-of-way issue. One thing that makes this a real advantage, that is, avoids federal money and PennDOT regulation, is the path will by and large be on private lands. And then you move away from all that, but then you've got liability issues of all regards. So we want to make sure that they're not liable because the public is traveling on there like the attorney said they know a way to solve it. The last thing I want to talk about is a new grant opportunity. And the reason this has come up kind of late is now that we know after 8 years that they're going into construction, we recognize along the Kennett Pike when you really had 5-foot shoulders, you're still going to have problems with all this brush and trees and everything. So we'd like to try to meet this deadline at the end of this month to put in an application. This is a 50-50 grant. It's coming from the Marcellus Legacy Fund the state has under Act 13. It's called the Greenways Trails and Recreation Program. And this work would be done in conjunction or just after we do this bikeway project. We feel that we'd like to put together an application for $60,000. Since it's 50-50, that's $30,000 from the state and $30,000 from the township. It would address such things as remove invasive brush and trees, open some of the vistas, clear vegetation from rock walls and rock outcroppings, and repair some of the stone walls, which we have all that along that section of Kennett Pike. So this is the landscape beautification. One thing that I would ask the board to do in the process this quickly, when we view that application, we do need a resolution saying that the township supports the grant application. And by that, the inference is you support the matching funds. So I would like you to authorize us to work with Lisa to create that resolution. You give her the authority to do that. These would be 2014 months, nothing this year, but next time.
When, are you asking them to adopt this resolution tonight, or just
No,
to
see, the
create
problem
one?
is, I want them to give you authorization for you to execute the resolution under the terms I just discussed. Because we have to put the right word in. It's not, and this is their.
I just asked because this, normally with resolutions, the supervisors have to sign, and this one doesn't ask for them to sign?
No, it
So they
calls
don't
for a
require that?
It requires a secretary.
Okay.
You're also secretary.
Right, but usually a resolution has to be signed by the supervisors. That's why I asked.
We come back and correct it if necessary. We'll start with the secretary.
How do you feel about committing $30,000 for next year's budget?
Well, frankly, I have a number of problems. Number one, I'm concerned that I've been given 5 minutes notice at the beginning of the meeting to get this paper, 2 pages. Secondly, I'm given notice that there is an application that's due in 2 weeks for a commitment of $30,000, and I remind the board that we are already overdraft on our budget as to the budget that we adopted.
This is for next year.
Well, then my concern remains that we are being given absolutely zip notice about any of this, and plus we're being asked, not only do we not have notice, but we're being asked to delegate duty to our township secretary, which is a top officer position, in case anybody is confused about that. So I frankly am not comfortable in doing this, and I've seen here, I had a lot of questions that I was going to get to, and since I'm already talking, I may as well just keep on going. There is, the $200,000 grant is likely to be abandoned, and I'm wondering who's going to do that. Is that something that the Board of Supervisors is going to do? What about the money that was there money that was received on the basis of that? And if there was, what do we have to do with that money? Pay it back?
I'll answer that for you.
Please.
That grant was issued to the Brandywine Valley Scenic Byway Commission. It has nothing to do with the township, although the township did offer to support the matching funds along with Pennsbury. $0 has been received, 0 has been spent, and nothing has been committed.
So nothing has to be paid back? Correct.
No.
Okay. I'm concerned opportunity to develop a solution to address 3 Hamilton issues, provide a new street and alley, correct sewer alignments, and safe driveway access. Is any of that going to come to the Board of Supervisors to review or approve, and is any of that going to the Planning Commission?
All of it would.
All of it will go?
Yes.
Good, good.
It may take several years for that to develop.
Okay.
The reason that is we do need Longwoods. We need to align with Longwood's plan, which is still unresolved.
And on that point, where you make references to attorneys seem hopeful, do we have an attorney that's in this arena?
Yes.
Who is that?
Robert Adams.
And who authorized him to do that?
The board.
The board?
The board gave the project team its budget, and we are spending the budget by hiring experts, including Bob Adams and Gilmore.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Now, let me get back to your first concern.
Sure.
You can not support the grant, and we've been through this before. Pennsbury chose not to support the grant.
Which grant?
The $925,000 grant for the Kennett Bikeway. So Kennett went alone on that. But if you choose not to support this, you will forever walk away from this grant opportunity. You could decide in September, October, December, next March to withdraw from this if you later think it's a big mistake. But if you want to take advantage of the opportunity, you will do, I think, what I asked, because it really doesn't commit you. Because you can withdraw anytime you wish. So, in my opinion, and it's the nature of these grants, you have to have a lot of things come together to make sure you're competitive. And I think we're competitive now because we're going to, as I said, do the construction. We've waited 8 years to do the construction, to get ready for it. We're at that peak interest point where we can be very competitive to get additional funds. But if you want to walk away for, half price, 50-50, fine. Don't support it. Your choice. I don't really care. I'm getting tired.
I can imagine. You've been working, you and Tom have both been working long hours on this. I certainly understand.
Well, we don't get a lot of advance notice about these grants. This one just came up.
No, but the key thing that came up is that PennDOT told us last week that finally This has been the last 2 years. We thought we were ready. We had the design ready 2 years ago.
Yeah, remember you told me.
Yeah, and now they advertise. After we worked with Lisa for about 3 weeks on our railroad, the flag man stand down there. But go ahead, turn it down.
Claire, are you comfortable now with his answers to your questions? Because I'd like to move along.
Now, what I would like is that the paperwork come to the supervisors and the supervisors act on it rather than doing it through Lisa. Which
You
puts.
can't do it before the 31st. You don't have another meeting, do you?
They can sign this, and we can fill in the blank.
I think we exhausted this subject. I would like to move that we authorize Lisa to execute this resolution per John Habrick's request.
Second.
Is there any further discussions or comments?
No.
Mr. Wood, I would just recommend, in order to satisfy perhaps Scudder, that you can later reaffirm it as supervisor.
I'm gonna have them sign this tonight.
Since it was that escape clause, I just thought that if there was a procedural problem,
We won't have an issue.
that was an option.
Seeing and hearing no further questions, I move the issue. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. So ordered.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, that's all the new business. Road work report is quite brief. We certainly had enough rain to wash out any sins that might have been visible anywhere. Road crew has been working on installing the pipe on 9 Gates Road. The road will be closed periodically to allow jackhammer work, which is, they're finding a lot of rock down there, which they didn't expect. They're working on the drainage throughout the township. Mowing will begin next week, and the Weaver mulch will grind the yard waste pile by the end of July. We've had postponements on that date for quite some time, but it's up to Weaver to do it.
And we'll solve it.
I'm sure they'll do it in due order, in good order. Okay, Bob?
We have 3 requests for extensions. Burrs Ridge West until August 29, Speakman until 9/29, and Leach property until December 31st. I move we approve those 3 extensions.
I second it. Any questions? Any? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now for public comment. Who would like to say something? Tom?
Hi, I'm Tom Nail, and I'd like to really thank the township engineer and Roger Lyle, the roadmaster. With the rain Friday, I had a problem with mud and dirty water coming down from the new development. They showed up within probably 15 minutes, walked my property, went up, and they issued a cease and desist on the contractor, which I'm very pleased to hear. But now my problem was minor compared to what poor Tim McGrory had with all the mud in his building and in the parking lot and such. But they were on the job out there in the pouring rain, and I was quite concerned over the engineer carrying an umbrella with the storm. But thank you.
Any other comments? Kudos? Anything else?
Yes, Chris Burkett. I just had a question about the status of things with Chandler Mill Bridge. I think going back to the spring, maybe there was some discussion about having a meeting with the commissioners or their representatives, and I was just wondering where we stand now with that.
Chris, we did have a meeting with the commissioners. There was quite a cast of people there. We went over the engineering report, which is available upstairs. It's a home and it was pretty well concluded that it cannot be rehabilitated. Alternate use for a bikeway or a footpath has not gotten enough traction from them. And their course is to continue on with the ultimate design and construction of a 24-foot bridge located
on summer abutments.
Can I add further to that?
Sure.
I did announce it, it wasn't the last meeting, yeah, maybe it was the last meeting, that, about the meeting that we had with the commissioners. What the commissioners said about the footbridge is that they would want to see from the township that the residents the majority are in favor of that, number one. Number two, they would want to then know if the supervisors are in favor of taking it over as a footbridge. And then they would determine if they're willing to do that. They did not commit either way if they would be willing to give it to the township as a footbridge. They did tell us, though, that they would, if they did decide to do that and the township wanted it, they would give it to the township, not a third party. And they said that right now, the way things are going, the bridge would start construction in 5 years, is that right?
Something like that, yeah.
5 years? And that delay is because the Act 163 is involved. So they said if everything goes well, then they would start in 5 years. So, and they also explained that even leaving the bridge as footbridge, there's still a lot of work that would need to be done because it's not safe as it is.
Right.
Okay,
Bill?
thank you. Lisa, I thought I had heard someplace along the line that the township has to do a survey of interest for the residents and present actually a formal document to the commissioners?
Well, they didn't tell us how we would have to do it, they just said they would want to see some sort of proof
some
that that's
form.
the majority
Yeah.
of the wishes of the residents.
Okay.
Ted Monson. If the township does nothing, the county is on a go schedule to proceed with constructing and
Correct.
reconstructing that bridge. So the county isn't waiting for
No.
No, they're
Kennett.
still moving
It's
forward.
going
for
forward.
anything. Right.
Glacially.
Okay.
It's the 163 process.
Right.
In the back.
Is there any plan to see how township residents feel about, I mean, if the commissioners said they would be willing to look at the issue if there was a majority, I mean, should we put something on the ballot in
Well,
November, or?
That's what the supervisors have to decide if they want to do. Because the county was clear that they will never consider rehabbing it as a one-lane bridge. So the supervisors need to decide if they want to do that.
And we would pay for it. They're not gonna pay for it
That's
if we
correct.
do that.
Mm-hmm.
Big issue.
They would give it to the township as is.
Big bucks.
How much are you talking about?
We don't know.
How can you say it's big?
Well, it's got to be, anything that's connected with that bridge is gonna be large. I've been too close to that subject for too long, I know otherwise.
We've asked the township engineers to price out what it would take to put it back in the condition it was in when it was first built, which I believe would be an 8-ton bridge, single lane. That process is based upon the most recent review by the county of the condition of the bridge. And I have a copy of it if you want to see it. I'd be glad to show it to you. It is an impressive document full of pictures that are very graphic.
Scary holes, probably.
And so all of that is now in the possession of our township engineers, and that's being processed at this time, so that we ought to be able to, that was one of the questions that was raised back when we had our public meeting here back in the spring. And we said we were going to do that, and that in fact is happening.
So there's not an estimate. Is there an estimate for how much it would be to make it a walking path?
Well, right now, if you just you can walk on it. I mean, you don't have to do anything to walk on it, but to make it fit the bridge for what it was designed to be, that's what's the
Right.
question.
No, I thought I heard that it would take rehab to make it a walking bridge.
That's what the county told us.
Yes, that's what they said.
So can you get the engineer to look at
That's
that?
one of the,
Yes.
that's one of the things we asked him for.
Great.
And, but I do think that if the supervisors are considering that, I mean, the best way is if we get it on the ballot, because, you know, we had that meeting, we could have another meeting, but not everybody shows up, and that would be the best way.
Before we entertain an idea to put it on the ballot, we need kind of information, cost, feasibility that we're attempting to get now.
Great.
We hope to have that soon.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments?
I advise the board of another issue that's gonna come before you.
Sure.
We have a trail system in the township, there's a couple different ends of it, controlled by two different groups now. You may not be aware that on the Kennett Square side, it's controlled by the Kennett Square Path Alliance. On the other side, it's controlled by a couple organizations. These trails were closed during the night. They plastic chained them off, which signified no trespassing by law. That was decided to be removed. And so people can enjoy Mother Nature. I don't know what you're going to enjoy Mother Nature at 1:30 in the morning, but this has become a problem. I can't cover all the bases, but I've had to come out a couple times with events that occur on these trails. I just want to advise the board, I'm going to meet with the boards that control these different paths and suggest that they be no trespassing dusk to dawn. But I may have to come back to you for an ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
It is a problem.
Yeah.
We have, down at the Marshall Mill House, and I got several calls at 10:30, 11:30 Saturday night about, so of course, refer to the police, but I get these, they call all the time about the kids hanging out up there and partying and other things going on. I did make the supervisors aware of it today, though, Albert, just so you know.
I have one piece of old business, the sign ordinance. We've received and reviewed several political sign ordinances, all with time limits. Several were the same as our proposal, and therefore recommend we advertise for adoption at our next meeting.
What's the sign ordinance that's being proposed?
It was the political signs. It was
It's not on
a
the
couple
agenda
months.
today.
It was a couple months ago. It was put on the website.
It's not on the agenda today.
It was tables.
Okay, so is this now officially part of the agenda today?
Yeah.
And what's the?
I'll just recommend we advertise it for adoption.
And how many people?
We're not adopting it.
How many people have complained about the political signs?
Enough that we have taken this action.
How many?
Enough. At the time of votes, this township blooms with signs. And in many cases, they're put up on without permission from the landowner. In other cases, they're absconded. And it needs some control, so we propose a sign ordinance for this purpose.
So the sign ordinance is just to put up signs with permission of the landowner?
That's correct.
And anything else that's going to restrict the landowner from putting up signs?
I'm not sure I follow your question.
Well, so you mentioned that there have been issues with signs being put up without the permission of the landowner.
That's correct.
And signs being taken down without the permission of the landowner.
That's correct.
So is the ordinance to address those two issues?
Certainly in part, yes.
And have there been other complaints besides those?
Yes. This is not just about the political signs, this is about all those signs you see along the hall and the highway. They're just stuck up. People are all familiar with cheap trees. It's about that. They're clarifying that. I got 30 of them in the trunk now that I took down yesterday.
The landowners can put whatever sign they want on their own property.
As long as it complies with zoning.
That's not according to the ordinance.
No,
that
not
was
That's not the
tabled.
ordinance I read.
Did you read the zoning law?
Yes,
It's in the zoning law.
well, the proposed ordinance restricted time and placement of political signs on a person's own property.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's different than what was just said.
It's the follow up to temporary signs. It's an area where signs are put up, and this is something I asked for, that obstruct people's vision coming out of their driveways, obstruct intersection vision. They're put up by prop owners without permission, and then we get the calls to take them down. And then we get accused of stealing them. This is what I asked to be clarified. There needs to be some regulation. But it's not something new. It's been on this meetings for months. But we need to get it done.
Does the regulation also penalize or provide a penalty for anyone removing a sign from someone's private property without their permission,
Sure,
as long as it's within the zone?
Well, theft is, unless it doesn't occur with the ordinance.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Okay. A person calls and says, there's now a sign on my property. What can I do? You can take it down, you're the property owner. Since you're on that road, I'll take it down for you if I have your permission.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, for example, I'll give you a very specific example. I live on Bayard Road, and I had numerous political signs taken off of my private property that I had put there. What's the penalty for that?
Theft, and I've charged somebody.
Yeah,
Okay.
that has happened.
It happened during
Directly
elections.
full of knowledge of an incident where that was done, and after quite some time, the person paid a rather heavy penalty in court. Go ahead.
I don't, this is something that affects people's First Amendment rights.
Certainly does.
I know there was discussion about changes to the ordinance. I don't see any emergency. I don't see any reason we can't do it the right way, have it presented at next month's meeting, so people can look at the ordinance and then vote on it on the
That's what it will be. All I said was advertise for it.
It's completely appropriate for me to ask this question. You shouldn't make me uncomfortable for doing it. This affects people's First Amendment rights, the most important right as a part of our political process. And to rush through it doesn't make any sense to me. Because the law says, as I read it, I can't put a sign on my property sooner than 30 days before an election, and I have to remove it within 5. I've read Supreme Court case law, which I think says that violates the First Amendment.
Okay, thank you.
So you have expressed in other settings concerns about adopting ordinances that would lead to litigation and the township having to defend it. I think it's worth making it available to people so they can read and understand it and discuss it.
If I've misunderstood something, that's the whole purpose of what we're trying to.
Well, it sounded like it wasn't on the agenda tonight, so anyone had interest in this topic wouldn't have known to have been here, like they would have with the gun ordinance.
Next month, there'll be plenty of opportunity to debate it. Before this gets adopted, it could last with discussions for people and input.
That's fine.
A great
Just like
deal
the
of time.
gentleman asked about the ordinance,
Thank
I
you.
just want to
Hasn't this been on the
understand.
website for a while?
Yes.
Yeah, it's been on the website for months.
Yeah.
I
Go ahead,
haven't heard
please.
word about it from
Okay,
Mr. Hanover.
Please.
Sarah Lapp, just one comment about the 60-day period that I'd like for you guys to consider is that anybody who's voting by absentee ballot won't have time to have seen any of the signs that are put up if they need to be not put up until 60 days before the election.
Point well taken. Thank you.
So 60 days seems a little short.
Okay.
So will you consider that 60-day option instead of the current 30-day limit?
Consider it, absolutely. That's the kind of input that we're looking for.
Thank
Appreciate it. Okay, nothing further. I move we adjourn. Is there a second? All